I wanted to do two things with you today. One is to give you some insight about ESMA, what we are and what we're doing. And I won't cover everything for sure. And in the second part, to tell you a bit more about what we're precisely doing regarding investors and the protection of investors. Why did I select investor protection? Well, for a number of reasons. One, as you will see, it's really core for ESMA. Two, you spend too much time on markets today. And three, there are important discussions taking place as we speak between legislators. And we know that MiFID II and MiFIR has a lot to do with investor protection. So let me, if we can move on the presentation to the next slide. And the following slide. So let me first start by ESMA. You've got in front of you our mission statement and the key characteristics that we have established. I'm sure you all know that ESMA is a relatively new organization created in April last year. In our mission, there are three core aspects, as you can see from that text. Investor protection, clearly number one. Stability of financial markets, clearly number two. And also single rule book. So the idea and the objective is really to reinforce the consistency of supervision across Europe regarding financial markets. While we were refining our mission, we have also defined some kind of key characteristic or core values. There are 6 of them. Thanks for that. And I won't go into all of them, but a few that are really important for us. The first one is independence. Independence, of course, from the financial industry, but also independence from the European Commission and the national competent authorities. Cooperative, we do work in close contact with those two group of institutions, and we try to also work in close contact and get regular feedback, and I'll come back to that from the various stakeholders. Professional, third, we are increasing our staff quite dramatically. We were 40 last year, we are 100 now, and we should be 160 by the end of next year. Beyond staff, which is absolutely key, we are also starting to get a lot of data that we will start analyzing that should allow us to do a number of things at the European level. Moving on, how do we work and how is our governance organized? We have a board of supervisors, and that's where you see that we are very cooperative and collegial, which is a key decision-making body. And around the table, you've got, apart from the chair and our sister authorities representative, all the members, heads of the national competent authorities. And this board of supervisors makes decisions on items which are prepared and presented to it by standing committees. And we've got about 10 of those standing committees. And they are the preparation bodies of all of what we do. And there also you've got staff from ESMA, of course, but also staff from the various members of the Board of Supervisors and then the NCAs. So it means that beyond our workforce and the 100 staff that I was mentioning, we are able to leverage upon the expertise of the various NCAs all over Europe. The other thing that I would like to focus on that slide is the amount of interaction with stakeholders that we have. To each of the standing committee mentioned, there is a consultative working group made of experts in this precise area that the standing committees is dealing with. And they are there to advise us, to provide us feedback on our various actions. At the ESMA level, there is also a further group called the Securities and Market Stakeholder Group, which is a bigger group which has aimed to look at everything we do across ESMA and also provide us feedback on the various tasks and work that we do. So on top of that, we are pretty transparent in what we do, and you can find a lot of information on the various works, streams, projects on our website. What are our tasks of responsibility? Well, as I'm sure you know, we've got a lot to do. We also have a lot of powers, and I think that's really important to underline that compared to our previous organization, we've got much more ability to act through technical standards, through advice for delegated acts, through guidelines and through warnings, and I will come back to that. You've got our task as responsibility on that slide. So that was a quick insight about ESMA and how we operate. Let's move on now to investor protection. Actually, investor protection is something which is kind of transversal to ESMA. And the way we want to look at it is that it's not a single domain, but it's a number of axes and fields which are closely interrelated to each other and all impact directly or indirectly on investor protection. I'd like to go quickly through each of them and tell you what we are doing in those fields. Let's start by investor education. If you look at our regulation, our mandate here is somewhat specific. And in a way, it's good for us because, as we all know, investor education requires large resources, and the impact of your actions are always difficult to assess and very often take an awful long time to materialize. Our role in this field is more about reviewing, coordinating financial literacy and education initiatives all over Europe. On top of that, there are a lot of good initiatives which are taking place inside Europe or beyond Europe. For instance, the OECD has done a very good mapping of initiatives and is continuing its work on that. So the level of expertise and initiative is good, but is uneven over Europe. So what we want to do is three things. First, to leverage upon the existing initiatives. Two, to develop best practices and try to bring all countries to the same level in that field. And three, to roll out some specific initiatives. They will be limited, but we hope they will be meaningful. And for instance, we should release very soon kind of a first edition of a series of publications which will be Know Your Rights for investors. So that was the first field, which was investor education. Let's move on to a more difficult topic, which is financial innovation. Contrary to investor education, financial innovation is really core for ESMA. It's a really core topic. We have established a full standing committee to tackle that. We also have similar mandates in the two other ISAs, EBA and EIOPA. So there is a number of work that we will do and we are doing jointly in this area. But it's a difficult mission. If you look at the regulation, what we're supposed to do in this area is to monitor consumer trends. But the retail customers are really different in Europe. I mean, there is no such a thing as an average European retail investors. Two, the level of financial innovation is huge and very diverse. Three, the real question, to quote Professor of Finance, is how do we keep the good parts of the innovation without being stuck with the bad? So all that make our job in this respect very difficult. So what do we plan to do? Well, there as well, we want to be able to leverage upon what's existing already in Europe. But we want to be able to establish a monitoring capacity of financial innovation across Europe. Be able to see what's going on in that field in all countries. We also want to increase proactivity. It's good to solve the last crisis, but it's even better to be ready for the next crisis. And last and not least, and that will be a link to MIFIR that I will tackle in a few minutes, we want to be prepared for possible product intervention if we've got those powers and try to come up with appropriate product intervention. If we move on now to product intervention and investor protection itself. On product intervention, we have actually conducted a survey. And funny enough, if you look across Europe, the powers of national competitors in Europe are pretty diversified, but also pretty high. It's clear that there is an increasing recognition at the national level about the possibility of widening the scope for investor protection by intervening earlier than at the distribution phase, possibly by intervening in the product design. We have seen various national initiatives in that field, especially on complex structured product, and a number of countries have come up with some initiatives. Just to name a few, France, Belgium, Spain, Italy have done a number of things in this area. The funny thing is that for the time being, the powers of ESMA are pretty limited in this area. If you look at the regulation, what we can do is only restricted to case of emergency, and it's actually pretty limited in terms of definition. Nevertheless, we have tried to be very active in this area, and you may have noticed that we have issued already 2 investor warnings, one on Forex exchange and trading FX product, and the issues linked to those products, and the second one about investing on the internet. And we've got a few more in the pipe, I can tell you. So, of course, we are looking very closely at what's in MiFIR. We are very keen to have more powers in this area, and we were pretty satisfied by the draft originally issued by the European Commission in this respect. I think it's fair to say that we have not established internally what will be our doctrine in terms of product intervention. Yes, it's going to be an important tool, but we also need at the same time not to overestimate the importance of that tool. There are a lot of things that you could do which go beyond or below banning products or services. If you've got the right rules in terms of disclosure, in terms of transparency, in terms of product information, it's sometimes often more useful than banning products and services, and I'll come back to that. The other thing is that you need to ban appropriately. And for instance, let's take that product. I mean, it's a product that over the last 12 years has provided a return of 66 basis points, while the inflation was on average 150 to 200 basis points. And the volatility of that product has been 25%. So will you ban or not ban this product? Well, the issue is that that product is actually the Standard & Poor's 500 in the US over the last 12 years. So it's not that easy to say if you ban or not. So what do we do regarding investor protection itself, directly on the rules which are aimed and done for protecting investors? Well, the first thing that we're doing is to promote greater convergence under MiFID I. You may have noticed that we have issued actually 2 sets of guidelines, and there is a third set which is being prepared. One was on suitability, in order to improve the due diligence on gathering information on clients and meeting suitability requirements for financial institutions. The second one was on compliance, and the compliance function. The idea was to increase both the effectiveness and the importance of the compliance function in financial institutions. The third one, which should come very soon, is guidelines about remuneration. What we want to do there is to reinforce the need for remuneration policies to be compliant with all the obligations which are contained in MiFID I, especially in terms of conflict of interest. And that's really important. On top of that, we are also active still within MiFID I about the supervisory action done by competent authorities in Europe, and we are preparing supervisory briefings to draw the attention to a number of items. Of course, we are fully aware of MiFID II coming. And as you know, we've got a lot to do with MiFID II. I mean, if my recollection is correct, we have about 60 technical standards to define. Slightly more than for EMIR. EMIR, we had 40, and we had to do that in 4 months. Apparently, for MiFID II, we'll have 12 months, so it should be a piece of cake. What we are doing to get ready is that we're establishing the various task forces and the drafting groups to tackle these issues. And as soon as there is a political agreement and the text is approved, we'll be ready to start the ball rolling. But what's really important in MiFID II is that the right text comes out. And I was mentioning earlier on that product intervention, yes, is an important tool for regulators, but there are some better tools and more efficient tools, more transversal. Disclosure is definitely one. I mean, being able to disclose information is absolutely needed. And to come back with financial innovation should not be the pretext, the reason or the argument to increase the opacity of the product. And I'm afraid that too often in the past it has been the case. But disclosure is not enough. We have to go beyond that, and it cannot be the solution to all problems. If you look at behavioral finance, it strongly suggests that the BAs and the competence failures are affecting decisions by investors are unlikely to be totally dead by disclosure. Disclosure is important on the topics of inducement, yes, but it's not enough. In some cases, the nature of the advice, especially when you talk about independent advice, is so important that it could justify some banning. We have to remember that the model fee model, which is still in place in a number of countries, is impacted on the quality of the advice given to investors. There are a lot of studies that have been made in this respect that's clearly seeing the impact of inducement on this area. Of course, we have to be careful, and the banning of inducement in some cases, possibly in portfolio management and in independent advice, may have some consequences that need to be looked at, and we have to be careful about that. But overall, we are convinced that it's a good thing, and that should come into fruition. Let me just conclude now by 3 points. First, I mean, ESMA is now clearly established. We've got clear powers, but we also have now clear and I hope efficient processes and increasing expertise through our staff and our cooperation with our various partners. I think we have been delivering quite efficiently on our numerous tasks, and I'm afraid to say that the to-do list is not shrinking. Last but not least, we are highly committed to investor protection, and we'll try to do everything within our powers to improve that in the various respects. But it's really important that the level 1 text on which we have no say are the right one. Thank you, and happy to take questions.